Lucia Vega froze mid-shelf as Principal Victor Reeves waved a document in Mandarin before his teaching staff. Her secret fluency burning in her throat. "Anyone who can translate this partnership proposal gets our highest honor, the Golden Scholar Scholarship," Reeves announced, his polished shoes clicking against the library's hardwood floor. The faculty lounge erupted in nervous laughter as teachers exchanged helpless glances. Lucia kept her eyes down, focusing on arranging picture books in alphabetical order, her small fingers moving methodically across the spines. "Maybe we should just use Google Translate," joked Mr. Derek Willis, the ambitious third-grade homeroom teacher, his Stanford class ring glinting under the fluorescent lights, probably more reliable than whatever we'd get from an outside service. Lucia's heart quickened as she overheard the conversation drifting through the library's open door. Her mother's hospital bills flashed through her mind. The mounting debt at UCSF Medical Center, the medications they couldn't afford, the specialist appointments they kept postponing. The Golden Scholar Scholarship wasn't just an honor. It came with a $15,000 educational fund and priority access to district resources. Her fingers closed around the jade translator's pen in her pocket. Her father's final gift. A skill hidden, a heritage denied, a chance dangling before her like a star just out of reach. Would revealing her true self to those who looked through her bring salvation or merely new humiliation? The question hung in the air like a prophecy as she slipped between the towering bookshelves, invisible once more. Lucia hadn't always been invisible. Just 2 years ago, she was the bright-eyed 6-year-old who amazed her kindergarten teachers by switching effortlessly between 3 languages, helping translate for new students from Mexico and China on their first scary days at Golden Bridge Elementary. Her Chinese mother, Min, had met her Dominican father, Rafael, at an international student exchange program in Boston. Their love story had flourished despite cultural differences, bound by a shared passion for languages and education. "Words build bridges between worlds, mija," Rafael would tell Lucia, his voice gentle as he taught her to write characters that danced across the page like tiny paintings. By age 7, she could translate conversations between her Chinese grandparents visiting from Shanghai and her Dominican abuela calling from Santo Domingo, earning proud smiles and extra cookies from both sides of her family. The jade translator's pen had been her 8th birthday gift, just 3 months ago. Cool and weighty in her small palm, its smooth surface interrupted only by carved characters spelling "Knowledge illuminates." When she held it close, she could smell the faint sandalwood scent of her father's home office, where they'd spent countless weekend mornings poring over picture books in multiple languages, turning learning into adventure. "This pen belonged to a great scholar in our family," her father had explained, kneeling to meet her eyes. "Now it belongs to another." 2 weeks later, Rafael Vega collapsed at work. The doctors said it was his heart. Sudden, unexpected, irreversible. He was gone before the ambulance reached the hospital, leaving behind a collection of multilingual books, a heartbroken family, and a jade pen that Lucia now carried everywhere as both talisman and burden. Min's grief manifested in her body. The stress triggered a severe autoimmune condition that left her increasingly weak. Her engineering degree from Beijing University sat useless in a drawer. Without American credentials or the energy to pursue recertification, she could only manage part-time work in Golden Bridge Elementary's library, shelving books and managing the circulation desk between rest breaks. Lucia's afternoons were no longer filled with playdates and soccer practice. Now, after the final bell, she would rush to the library to help her mother, pushing the heavy book cart her mother could no longer manage, reaching high shelves her mother could no longer stretch toward, staying until the janitor locked the doors at 6 p.m. The school knew about their situation. Principal Reeves had quietly waived Lucia's lunch fees. The PTA had organized a meal train that first terrible month. But sympathy didn't pay for the experimental treatment Dr. Chen at UCSF said might help Min's condition. $12,000 out of pocket, not covered by their basic insurance. Lucia had overheard her mother crying on the phone with the billing department last week. "Please, just a little more time. My husband The Golden Scholar Scholarship suddenly meant everything. The documents arrived at Golden Bridge Elementary on a crisp Monday morning, bearing the elegant letterhead of Shanghai International Academy and the logo of the National STEM and Language Championship, the most prestigious academic competition for elementary schools in the United States. Lucia noticed because she was restocking the biography section nearby, close enough to see the Shanghai postmark and hear Principal Reeves's sharp intake of breath. She also noticed how his perpetually composed face flickered with momentary panic as he rifled through page after page of dense Mandarin characters. By lunch, the teacher's lounge was buzzing with tension. Lucia caught fragments as she passed by with a cart of returned books. The partnership documents, completely in Chinese. Shanghai Academy wants confirmation by Wednesday. If we can't respond properly, we lose our spot in the championship. Mrs. Mapadi Lin is on maternity leave. Mr. Zhang transferred to Oakland last month. The school had no Mandarin fluent staff available. That afternoon, Reeves called an emergency faculty meeting in the library. Lucia busied herself in the storage room, sorting donation boxes, but the thin walls couldn't contain the principal's frustrated voice. Shanghai International Academy is one of the top elementary schools in Asia, Reeves explained. This partnership could put Golden Bridge on the map. They've sent us the complete competition materials, cultural exchange protocols, and, most importantly, advanced copies of the STEM challenge categories, all in Mandarin. "Can't we hire a professional translator?" asked Ms. Martinez, the fourth-grade teacher. "The championship requires all partner communications to be handled internally. It's part of demonstrating genuine cross-cultural capability," Reeves replied. "Besides, do you know what rush translation services cost? The district would never approve it." "What about parents?" suggested Ms. Thompson. "Surely some of our families and admit to our prestigious partner school that we can't handle basic communication?" Reeves scoffed. "Shanghai Academy specifically chose us because of our reputation for academic excellence. This is a test, whether they admit it or not." Lucia's heart pounded as she listened. She recognized the competition name. Her father had mentioned it once, excitedly, saying it was the kind of opportunity that could change a student's entire trajectory. "I'll make it worth someone's while," Reeves continued, his voice taking on a formal edge. "Any staff member who can translate these documents accurately within 48 hours will receive my personal recommendation for the Golden Scholar Scholarship Selection Committee, and we all know that recommendation carries significant weight." A murmur rippled through the faculty. "But if a student could somehow help," Reeves added, almost as an afterthought, "they would automatically qualify for Golden Scholar themselves. Full scholarship benefits, recognition at the district level, the works." The meeting ended with anxious energy. Teachers grabbed their copies of the documents, already pulling out phones to search for translation apps. Lucia watched them leave, clutching her jade pen through the fabric of her pocket. 48 hours. The same timeline as her mother's upcoming payment deadline at UCSF. That night, in their small apartment near Balboa Park, Lucia sat at the kitchen table while her mother rested on the worn sofa, wrapped in the quilt Lucia's grandmother had sent from Shanghai. "Mama, can I practice my characters?" Lucia asked, pulling out her homework folder. Min smiled weakly. "Of course, Baobei. Your father would be so proud you're keeping up with your studies." Lucia opened her notebook, but her mind was elsewhere. The documents in Principal Reeves's office, the competition that could change everything, the scholarship that could save her mother. She thought of her father's voice. Words build bridges between worlds. But she was just 8 years old, a third grader who helped in the library, who would listen to her, Who would believe her? After her mother fell asleep, Lucia crept to the small desk in the corner of their bedroom, once her father's workspace, now covered with her mother's medical papers and her own school projects. She pulled out a fresh notebook and began to write. If she couldn't reveal herself directly, perhaps there was another way. The first anonymous note appeared Tuesday morning, tucked inside the library's suggestion box. The title page says, Official Partnership and Competition Protocol, not Partnership Opportunities. The character Zieyi means formal agreement. Night Owl. Lucia had arrived early before the other students, slipping the note through the slot while pretending to return a book. She watched from behind the science fiction section as Principal Reeves discovered it during his morning library walkthrough. What the? He unfolded the paper, read it twice, then looked around the empty room with narrowed eyes. Who left this? By that afternoon, Lucia had left 3 more notes, each correcting critical errors in the teacher's amateur translation attempts, each signed simply Night Owl. The faculty was baffled. The corrections were too sophisticated to be a prank, too accurate to be coincidence. Someone with genuine expertise was helping them. But who? It has to be a parent, Ms. Martinez reasoned during their afternoon huddle. Someone who saw the documents when picking up their kid. But how would they access the library after hours? Mr. Willis countered, his eyes scanning the room suspiciously. The building is locked by 6:30. Principal Reeves stroked his chin thoughtfully. Whoever they are, they're doing us a favor. Let's not question it too much. We have less than 36 hours left. But Willis wasn't satisfied. Lucia noticed him lingering in the library that day, watching everyone who came and went with unsettling intensity. When their eyes met briefly, she quickly looked down at her book cart, heart hammering. She was invisible. She had to stay invisible. Just a little longer. That evening, Lucia made her boldest move yet. With her mother resting in the staff break room, Lucia slipped into the main library section with her jade pen and notebook. The after-school tutoring program had ended. Only the janitor's distant vacuum broke the silence. The teachers had left their translation attempts scattered across the main table, a mess of crossed-out words, question marks, and increasingly desperate margin notes. Lucia winced at their errors. They had completely misunderstood the competition format, mistranslating key scientific terms in ways that could sabotage Golden Bridge's entire entry. Working quickly, she pulled out fresh paper and began writing corrections in her careful, practiced hand. Technical terms her father had taught her flowed from memory. Guang He Zuoyong, photosynthesis. Diane Lu, electrical circuit. Zhong Li, gravity. Jia Shi, hypothesis. The STEM challenge categories weren't just language tests, they were science problems that required precise translation to understand. One mistranslated term could send students down completely wrong paths. She signed each correction Night Owl, placed them prominently on the table, and was about to return to the storage room when she heard footsteps approaching. Lucia dove behind the checkout desk, pressing herself against the cabinet. Barely breathing. The footsteps stopped. A long pause. Interesting, said Mr. Willis's voice, cold and calculating. Very interesting. Through the small gap beneath the desk, Lucia could see his polished shoes pivot slowly, surveying the room. She heard paper rustling. He was picking up her notes. Another pause. Then, to her horror, she heard the distinctive sound of an eraser. She risked a peek around the desk's edge, just in time to see Willis carefully erasing Night Owl from the bottom of the page and writing his own initials in its place. I knew those weekend Mandarin classes would pay off eventually, he murmured to himself with a satisfied smile. Then louder, as if rehearsing, Yes, Principal Reeves, I've been studying privately. Didn't want to make a fuss until I was more fluent. But given the emergency, he gathered all the notes, straightened his tie, and strode toward the principal's office with the confidence of a man about to claim a victory he hadn't earned. Lucia stayed frozen behind the desk, tears of frustration burning her eyes. Her work, her father's legacy, stolen by someone who saw her as nothing, less than nothing. The clock on the wall read 5:47 p.m., less than 26 hours until the deadline, and somewhere in those documents was a trap she hadn't finished explaining. Terminology tricks that Shanghai Academy had deliberately included to test whether their American partners truly understood the material. If Willis's stolen incomplete translation went through, Golden Bridge would fail spectacularly on a national stage. Lucia clutched her jade pen until her knuckles whitened. What could an 8-year-old possibly do against a grown-up who held all the power? Wednesday morning brought chaos to Golden Bridge Elementary. Principal Reeves had called a special assembly to announce that the translation crisis had been solved, thanks to the hidden talents of Mr. Derek Willis, who had apparently been studying Mandarin in his personal time. Lucia sat in the back row of the auditorium with her third-grade class, watching Willis accept congratulations from the faculty, his false modesty making her stomach turn. "I always believed in continuous learning," Willis said into the microphone, his Stanford ring catching the stage lights. "When I saw our school facing this challenge, I knew I had to step up." Applause echoed through the auditorium. Principal Reeves beamed. Ms. Martinez dabbed at her eyes, moved by her colleagues' supposed dedication. Lucia's classmates whispered around her, "Mr. Willis is so cool. I didn't know teachers could speak Chinese. My mom says he's going to be Teacher of the Year for sure." Only Lucia knew the truth. Only she had seen him erase Night Owl and claim her corrections as his own. But who would believe a quiet third grader over a charming, Stanford-educated teacher? She slipped her hand into her pocket, touching the jade pen for comfort, and felt her blood freeze. It was gone. Lucia searched frantically during morning recess, retracing every step from the assembly to the library. She checked under desks, behind bookshelves, in the lost and found. Nothing. The pen had been in her pocket during the assembly. She was certain. But after, "Looking for this?" Willis stood in the doorway of the empty library, the jade pen twirling between his fingers like a baton. "That's mine," Lucia whispered, her voice small but steady. "Please give it back." "Yours." Willis raised an eyebrow, examining the carved characters with exaggerated curiosity. "Quite an unusual item for a little girl. These characters here, they look like something a scholar would own, not a library helper." "It was my father's." Lucia's throat tightened. "He gave it to me." Willis made no move to return it. "I've been watching you, Lucia. You're always lurking around when the translation documents are out, always pretending to shelve books in exactly the right spot to overhear conversations." Lucia's heart pounded, but she kept her face blank, the same mask she'd worn for months of invisibility. "I don't know what you mean, Mr. Willis." "Oh, I think you do." He leaned closer, his smile sharp. "I think you know exactly what Night Owl means." He waited for her to crack, to confess, but Lucia had learned from watching her mother navigate impossible situations with quiet dignity. She simply stared at him, expression carefully empty. Finally, Willis straightened. "San Francisco Unified School District has strict policies about unauthorized items on campus. This," he pocketed the jade pen, "will need to be reviewed by administration. Potential security concern. You understand. But run along to class, Lucia, and maybe focus more on your spelling homework than on adult business you don't understand." He walked away, her father's pen disappearing with him. Lucia stood alone in the library, shaking with silent fury. The sandalwood scent still lingered in her memory, but the pen was gone. By Thursday afternoon, things had gotten worse. Principal Reeves, pleased with Willis's translation work, had submitted the documents to Shanghai International Academy and registered Golden Bridge for the National STEM and Language Championship. The competition was scheduled for next month in Washington, D.C., but Lucia had identified critical errors in Willis's submission, errors she had been trying to correct when he interrupted her. The most dangerous was in the Science Challenge category descriptions. Willis had translated Reichuan Dao as heat conduction, technically correct, but missing the crucial context that the challenge actually focused on Ray Fouché, heat radiation, a completely different concept. Any student preparing based on his translation would study the wrong material entirely. There was also the matter of the partnership agreement itself, a clause that Willis rendered as optional cultural exchange visits actually read as mandatory annual delegation, a significant commitment that Principal Reeves clearly didn't understand he was making. Lucia had tried leaving more anonymous notes, but Willis seemed to be everywhere now, monitoring the library with predatory attention. The school had installed new security cameras in the hallways, part of a routine San Francisco unified upgrade, but the timing felt like a trap closing around her. That evening, she made one final attempt. While her mother processed returns at the circulation desk, Lucia slipped into the small computer alcove usually reserved for sixth-grade research projects. She pulled up a blank document and began typing her corrections, a complete analysis of the translation errors, the scientific terminology traps, everything Willis had missed or mangled. She was halfway through when she heard Willis's voice in the hallway. "Just need to check the computer logs, making sure students aren't accessing inappropriate sites." Lucia's fingers flew across the keyboard, trying to save the document. But before she could finish, Willis appeared behind her. "Working late?" His voice was ice. "I was just... homework," Lucia fumbled. "On the library's computer? When you have textbooks to read?" He reached past her and with one click closed her document without saving. "Whatever you were doing, I'm sure it wasn't appropriate." Then, with casual cruelty, he picked up the water bottle sitting on the desk and tipped it directly onto the keyboard. "Oh dear," he said flatly as water seeped between the keys, sparks flickering ominously. "How clumsy of me. I was just trying to move it and—" He shrugged. "These old computers, so fragile." The screen went black. "Accidents happen," Willis added, turning to leave. "Especially to little girls who stick their noses where they don't belong." Lucia stared at the ruined computer, her saved corrections gone forever. Her mother's concerned face appeared around the bookshelf. "Mija? What happened? I heard—" "Nothing, Mama," Lucia forced a smile. "Just an accident." But as her mother fussed over the water damage, Lucia's mind was already racing. Willis had taken her pen, destroyed her work, blocked every anonymous avenue she had tried. There was only one option left. She would have to stop being invisible. Thursday night, Lucia barely slept. She lay in bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars her father had pasted on the ceiling when she was 5, thinking through her options. If she spoke up now, who would believe her? She was 8 years old. Willis was a respected teacher with a Stanford education. He had already convinced everyone that he was the translation hero. But if she stayed silent, Golden Bridge would embarrass itself at the national championship. Students would waste weeks studying the wrong material. The partnership with Shanghai Academy might collapse, and her chance at the scholarship, at helping her mother, would disappear forever. Her phone buzzed softly. Not her phone, her mother's, charging on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a notification. UCSF Billing Department, final notice. Payment of $4,200 required by Friday 5 p.m. to maintain treatment eligibility. Lucia's chest tightened. Friday was tomorrow. They didn't have $4,200. They barely had $400. The scholarship prize wouldn't just change her future. It might be the only thing standing between her mother and losing access to the doctors who were keeping her stable. She thought of her father's voice. Words build bridges between worlds. But what happened when those bridges were guarded by people who wanted to keep you out? She closed her eyes and made her decision. Tomorrow, at the academic council meeting where Willis would present his translation to the school board, she would reveal everything. She might fail. They might laugh at her. Willis might find a way to twist her words, to make her look like a foolish child making up stories. But at least she would know she tried. The academic council meeting began at 9 a.m. Friday in the Golden Bridge Elementary Multipurpose Room, exactly 8 hours before the UCSF payment deadline. Lucia sat in the back row with the other students selected as observers, a tradition meant to expose promising pupils to school governance. She had volunteered that morning, surprising her teacher, who usually had to beg for participants. Principal Reeves presided over a long table where board members, parent representatives, and senior faculty had gathered for the final review of the Shanghai Academy partnership. A video screen displayed the connection status for their partner school. Principal Zhang from Shanghai International Academy would be joining remotely to witness the presentation. Willis stood at the podium, PowerPoint ready, confidence radiating from his perfectly pressed suit. Distinguished board members, colleagues, parents, he began, clicking to his first slide. I'm honored to present the culmination of our partnership efforts with one of Asia's most prestigious elementary schools. Lucia's palms were sweating. She gripped the armrests of her small chair, rehearsing what she would say when she would say it. Willis droned on about cross-cultural synergy and STEM excellence pipelines. The board members nodded approvingly. Principal Reeves beamed with satisfaction. Then Willis reached the translation section. As you can see here, he said, pointing to a projected document, the competition categories focus on heat conduction experiments, with an emphasis on thermal transfer through solid materials. Wrong, Lucia thought, completely wrong. And this clause regarding exchange visits is entirely optional, allowing flexibility in our implementation timeline. Also wrong, dangerously wrong. The Shanghai Academy has expressed great confidence in our preparation, and I believe— Mr. Willis. The room fell silent. Lucia was standing. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, too thin, too young. But she kept going. You've mistranslated the competition category. It's not about heat conduction. Every head in the room swiveled toward her. Principal Reeves frowned. Willis's face cycled through surprise, annoyance, and something darker. Excuse me? His voice was dangerously soft. Young lady, this is an adult presentation. Please sit down. The character Fuxi means radiation, not conduction. Lucia's voice grew steadier. The challenge is about heat radiation, how heat moves through empty space like from the sun. If our students prepare for conduction experiments, they'll fail. Murmurs rippled through the audience. A board member leaned forward with interest. Willis's smile became strained. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I've been studying Mandarin for years. I think I know. You didn't study anything. The words burst out before Lucia could stop them. You stole my translations. I was leaving corrections signed Night Owl, and I saw you erase my name and write yours instead. Gasps. Principal Reeves half rose from his chair. Willis's face flushed crimson. This is absurd, he sputtered. She's a child. She's making up stories because— Di shi liu ye, di si duan, Lucia interrupted, reciting from memory. Page 16, paragraph 4. The partnership clause says, Qiangzhi Xingniandu Daibiao Tuan Jiaoliu, mandatory annual delegation exchange, not optional cultural visits. If you sign this agreement thinking it's optional, you're committing the school to something you don't understand. The room had gone completely still. Willis laughed, but it came out high and forced. You can't possibly— You're 8 years old. You probably just memorized some phrases from the internet. Ask me anything. Lucia stepped into the aisle, her small figure somehow commanding attention. Any section of the document, I translated all of it. I can explain every clause, every technical term. Principal Reeves stared at her as if seeing a ghost. Lucia. Your last name is Vega. My father was Lucia Vega. She lifted her chin. He was a professional translator. He taught me Mandarin, Spanish, and English since I was 3 years old. He gave me a jade pen for my 8th birthday. Her voice caught. 3 weeks before he died. Mr. Willis took it from me on Tuesday and called it a security concern. A heavy silence fell. Then, from the video screen, a voice spoke in Mandarin. Would this be the jade pen with the inscription, "Knowledge illuminates"? Everyone turned to the display, where an elegant older woman had appeared. Principal Zhang from Shanghai International Academy. Beside her sat a familiar face that made Lucia's heart leap. Mr. Chen, her father's former colleague from his translation days, now apparently working with the Shanghai School District. Miss Vega, Mr. Chen continued in Mandarin, a warm smile spreading across his face. It is an honor to finally meet Raphael's daughter. He spoke of your linguistic gifts often when we worked together. Lucia responded in flawless Mandarin, her father's tones flowing naturally. The honor is mine, Mr. Chen. I didn't realize you were aware of my situation here. We weren't, Principal Zhang interjected in accented English, until our review team noticed something unusual. The anonymous corrections appearing in the translation drafts your school submitted for feedback. They were exceptional, far beyond what typical translation software produces. Very sophisticated understanding of technical terminology. She paused, letting the implication sink in. We specifically included complex phrasing in our documents as a test. We wanted to see if Golden Bridge Academy truly had the linguistic expertise for this partnership, or if they were simply using automated services. Principal Reeves looked between the screen and Lucia, understanding beginning to dawn. Are you saying, he asked slowly, that this 8-year-old girl passed your test? I'm saying she was the only one who understood our documents correctly. Principal Zhang's gaze sharpened. I'm also saying that we are very concerned about the discrepancy between the quality of those anonymous corrections and the error-filled translation Mr. Willis officially submitted. We were about to withdraw from the partnership entirely. Willis had gone pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The Night Owl notes demonstrated not just translation skill, Mr. Chen added, but deep understanding of scientific concepts, exactly what the STEM championship requires. We were hoping to identify this mysterious expert and request their involvement directly. Lucia felt tears prickling her eyes, but forced them back. I tried to help. I left notes because I thought no one would listen if I just told them who I was. I'm just a kid who helps in the library. Principal Zhang's expression softened. From what I've observed in the last 5 minutes, Miss Vega, you are considerably more than that. The next hour was a blur. Principal Reeves, his face cycling through embarrassment, anger, and finally grudging respect, ordered a complete review of the situation. Willis tried to maintain his story, but when confronted with Lucia's detailed, real-time translation of random document sections the board selected, his claims collapsed like a house of cards. The final blow came when security footage from the library showed Willis clearly erasing Night Owl from a note and replacing it with his own initials. Another clip showed him deliberately tipping water onto the computer keyboard while Lucia looked on in helpless shock. Mr. Willis? Principal Reeves's voice could have frozen water. You are suspended immediately, pending a formal hearing under California Education Code Section 44932. Fraud, deliberate sabotage of school property, and confiscation of a student's personal belonging will all be investigated. You can't, she's lying, this is, Willis sputtered. Security will escort you to collect your personal effects. Reeves nodded to the guard at the door. Your classroom will be managed by a substitute until further notice. As Willis was led away, still protesting, Lucia felt a tap on her shoulder. A board member was holding out the jade pen. This was in his desk drawer, she said gently. I believe it belongs to you. Lucia's fingers closed around the familiar weight, cool, solid, grounding. The carved characters spelling "Knowledge illuminates" caught the morning light. The emergency meeting that followed was unlike anything Golden Bridge Elementary had ever seen. Principal Zhang, via video, proposed that Lucia serve as the official liaison between the two schools for the National STEM and Language Championship. The board, still reeling from the morning's revelations, unanimously approved. "But she's 8 years old," one parent representative protested weakly. "The competition is in Washington, D.C. The other delegates are high schoolers. The competition has a junior division for students in grades K-5, Principal Zhang clarified. "Lucia would be representing your school in that category, as both a translator and a participant. Given her unique qualifications, we believe she could excel in ways no one has anticipated." Principal Reeves looked at Lucia, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. "Miss Vega," he said slowly, "do you want to do this?" Lucia thought of her mother, still resting in the library break room, unaware of everything that had just happened. She thought of the medical bills, the scholarship money, the chance to honor her father's legacy. "Yes," she said clearly. "I do." The National STEM and Language Championship was held 6 weeks later at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. Lucia had spent every available moment preparing, not just translating, but studying the science concepts, practicing presentation skills, learning to speak confidently in front of crowds. Her mother, whose condition had stabilized thanks to an emergency scholarship fund, Principal Reeves, quietly established, helped her rehearse every evening. The Golden Bridge team arrived in the capital on a crisp November morning. Lucia was the youngest competitor at the event by 2 years, a fact that drew curious stares and whispered speculation from other schools. "Isn't she a little small?" she heard a parent from a New York school mutter. "Golden Bridge brought an 8-year-old? Are they serious?" Lucia smoothed down her dress, the same one she'd worn to her father's memorial service, now paired with the jade pen tucked safely in her pocket, and walked into the competition hall with her head held high. The junior division challenges tested exactly what Shanghai Academy had promised: scientific reasoning combined with multilingual communication. Students had to translate technical passages, explain concepts in multiple languages, and demonstrate genuine understanding of STEM principles. Lucia blazed through the written portion, her father's years of patient instruction guiding her hand. During the oral presentation, she switched between English, Spanish, and Mandarin so smoothly that judges kept checking their scoring sheets, convinced they must have marked something wrong. For the final challenge, she had to explain the concept of photosynthesis to 3 different audiences: a panel of English-speaking scientists, a group of Spanish-speaking students, and a delegation of Mandarin-speaking educators from partner schools. She thought of her father, teaching her to describe the same sunset in 3 different languages, each version capturing something unique about the beauty before them. "Words build bridges between worlds," she murmured to herself. Then she stepped onto the stage and began to speak. "And the winner of the 2024 National STEM and Language Championship, Junior Division, representing Golden Bridge Elementary School of San Francisco." The announcer paused for effect. Lucia gripped her mother's hand tightly in the audience. "Lucia Vega!" The auditorium erupted. Min burst into tears, hugging her daughter so fiercely that Lucia could barely breathe. Principal Reeves, who had flown to D.C. for the finals, stood applauding with a genuine smile that looked strange on his usually stern face. On the screen behind the stage, Principal Zhang and Mr. Chen were applauding too, their video connection linking Shanghai to Washington in real-time celebration. Lucia walked to the stage on shaking legs, accepting the trophy that was almost as tall as she was. The scholarship prize, $25,000 for educational expenses, was announced to more applause. But the real victory came in the smaller moments. The California Department of Education representative who approached afterward, explaining that Lucia had automatically qualified for the state's Gifted and Talented Education GATE program. The UCSF doctor who called that evening, having heard about Lucia's win through a colleague, offering to expedite Min's case for a special charitable treatment program. The letter from Golden Bridge's school board, arriving a week later, announcing the establishment of the Hidden Talents Initiative, a program to identify and nurture exceptional abilities among all students, regardless of background. "We realized," Principal Reeves wrote in his attached note, "that talent doesn't always arrive in expected packages. Your courage in speaking up has changed how we see our entire community." 6 months later, Lucia sat in the newly dedicated Lucia Vega Memorial Library at Golden Bridge Elementary, now expanded and equipped with a multilingual resource center funded by the Championship Prize and matching grants. Her mother, responding well to treatment, had returned to work, not as a library assistant, but as a part-time engineering tutor for the school's new STEM enrichment program. Her Beijing University credentials had finally found their place. The jade pen rested in a small display case near the entrance, beside a plaque explaining its significance. Lucia still carried it for important occasions: presentations, competitions, the monthly video calls with Principal Zhang's school. But it no longer needed to be hidden. The Hidden Talents Club met every Tuesday and Thursday after school, attracting students from every grade who had skills they'd never known how to share. The former cafeteria worker who spoke 5 languages. The quiet 5th grader whose grandmother had taught him traditional Chinese painting. The kindergartner who could recite poetry in Tagalog. Lucia helped run the meetings, encouraging students to step forward, to be seen. "What if no one believes me?" a shy 2nd grader asked her once, clutching a notebook full of stories she'd written in Vietnamese. Lucia knelt to meet her eyes, remembering how it felt to be invisible. "Show them anyway," she said gently. "The people who matter will believe you, and the ones who don't. They might surprise you once they see what you can do." The girl smiled, clutching her notebook a little tighter. "Like you surprised everyone?" "Exactly like that." On the anniversary of her father's death, Lucia visited his grave with her mother. They brought fresh flowers and 3 poems, one in English, one in Spanish, one in Mandarin, that Lucia had written for the occasion. Min read the Spanish verse, her accent softening the consonants the way Raphael used to tease her about. Lucia read the English and Mandarin portions, her voice steady and clear. When they finished, Min pressed a kiss to the headstone. "He would be so proud," she whispered. Lucia nodded, touching the jade pen in her pocket. "I know," she said. "I can feel it." A breeze stirred the oak tree above them, carrying the faint scent of sandalwood and possibility. Somewhere nearby, a mockingbird sang in 3 different melodies, as if even the birds understood that some voices were meant to speak in many languages. Lucia closed her eyes and listened. Her father had built bridges between worlds. Now, she was building highways. Has someone ever underestimated your potential? Did you have a moment when you finally showed your true value, just like Lucia? Share your story in the comments below. I want to hear how you transformed from invisible to invaluable. If you enjoyed this story of hidden talent and unexpected triumph, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to Beat Stories for more powerful narratives that will inspire you to reveal your own hidden strengths. Hit that like button if you've ever been underestimated, and ring the notification bell to never miss our weekly uploads of life-changing stories. Remember, your next chapter could be just one brave decision away, just like Lucia's was. Beat Stories, where your potential becomes your power. Behind every headline is a human story. At Beat Stories, we go deeper, where emotion meets evidence and drama reveals the truth. If this story made you pause, reflect, or feel something, don't forget to subscribe. There's more to come.